Hi all, good evening. Is my screen visible to everyone? Awesome. Right. So just a recap of yesterday's session, we have looked into the process called approval process. All right, it is similar to what we see in a real time. In case if you do a kind of in case if you want to get an approval from your manager or from the higher management, you can always use your approval process set up in your Salesforce so that you can get that approved from your Salesforce as well. Right? In case if you want any approvals rather than doing it over emails, you can have a track of that information in Salesforce by implementing this approval process. Right? You can also get your approvals from email, right? But it always makes sense to have it in Salesforce because all the data that we have is in Salesforce. That is why we are having this approval process as a kind of a medium to track this information. Right? That is what we have learned in our yesterday's class. Right? In today's class, what we are going to look at is we are going to look at another concept which is nothing but migration. All right. So we are going to look at another concept called migration. All right. So if you ask me what exactly this migration is all about, right? So whenever you want to move your data, that is nothing but the data that you have saved as a part of your records, or else any configuration or customization as a part of our Salesforce design, you can always use your migration as your concept. All right. So anything that you want to send it as a data, anything that you want to migrate the records from one or another, or in case if you have a requirement where you need to update the bulk data, that is where you can use your concept called migration. Right. Again, migration concept is divided into two things. One is your data migration, where you will be dealing with your record/data. Another concept, the second concept that we have in this migration concept is nothing but code migration. Right. So that is nothing but your code migration. In your data migration, like the name suggests, we'll be dealing with the data. And in the code migration, you'll deal with the migration of your code from one or to another. When I say code migration, it refers both the customization and configuration as well. All right. So that is what we are going to look at. All right. The first thing that we are going to look at is the data migration concept. All right. We are going to look at the data migration concept. And just give me 1 minute. Alright, so we have this data migration, alright, where we will be dealing with the data movement from one or to another, or in case if you have a data where you need to correct that, you can always use your data migration. Alright, so what we'll be doing as a part of this data migration exercise is, alright, so I'll give you a requirement where we can go through that and understand what exactly the need of your data migration. Alright, now let's say I have these records. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 records. Right? We have 6 records here. Alright. So what if I open this record and let's say we have any city, I'm just checking what all the fields that we have, and then we can proceed with that activity. Alright. So yeah, all right. So let me take an example. All right. So what I have here is I have an amount field. All right. I have an amount field here. All right. Now what I want is as a part of my exercise, I want to update this amount field to 5,000 for all the records that I have in the system. All right, I'm just taking an example here. My requirement is for all the data that is present. When I say data, it is nothing but the records, right? It is nothing but the records. What I want is, I want all the records that are there in this demo are the 6 batch details object to be updated with this amount as 5,000. To be updated as amount as 5,000. All right, guys. Can you guys hear me now? Awesome. All right. I had to pick one important call. That is where I had unmuted myself. All right. Awesome. Now, so what is my requirement here is on this object. I want to update this amount field to some value. All right. I just want to update this amount field to some value. All right. Let's say if it is just for 10 records, what we can do, we can simply open that record like how I am doing right now. All right. I can click on that edit button, add some value into that field, and I can click on send. All right. I can click on save. All right. I can click on save. All right. That is what I can do. What if there are like thousands of records in the system? How can we do that? So let's say if there are like thousands of records, let's say 5,000 of records for which I need to update this amount field to 500 or 5,000, right? So what should I do? Is it a kind of a good activity that we can give it to a system admin saying that open all these 5,000 records and update this value to 5,000, right? So that poor fellow should open each and every record, update that, click on edit, enter that amount information, and he has to click on save. Right? This activity should be completed for all the 5,000 records that are there in the system. Right? Imagine if I take at least 30 seconds to complete this activity for one record. Imagine how many minutes that I need to take, or how many hours that I need to basically take to complete this activity. Right? 5,000 records where I need to click on edit on each and every record, update this field to 5,000, right? Update this value to 5,000, then save it back, right? So imagine how much time it would take. And is there any kind of a guarantee that your admin or like person like you, human who is doing this activity like you and me, will there be a chance of do you think that there will be a slight chance that a record would be missed, right? Even though he is cautious, even though he's doing it manually, there are chances that there could be a scenario where he might skip one record. Right? There are human errors involved here because it's a manual activity that we are doing, right? Since we are dealing with a manual activity here, there might be chances that there could be some human errors involved, right? So let's say he might open that record and instead of adding 5,000, he might add 500, right? There is a probability of a human error in this scenario, right? Now, in order to save time, plus in order to optimize the performance, and also to make sure that there are no human errors, that is where Salesforce is giving this option of doing a data migration. Alright. So here in this scenario, what we are doing, we are updating the existing records with that information. Alright. What if you want to insert a bunch of records? That is where also you cannot ask your admin or a person who has a capability to create this record. Alright, you cannot ask them to do it manually. Alright, there is a chance of introducing a human error. Right? So that is why what we can do is we can always make use of your data migration. Right? Now as a part of this exercise, what I'll be doing is I'll be collecting all the records that I have on this object. Right? I'm not collecting all the records. I'm not collecting 5,000 records as an example that we have discussed. But for now, I'll be taking all these records and I'll be preparing a file so that I can use the concept of data migration. Right? I'll be picking up all these records. Right? I'll be picking up all these records as a part of this exercise, and I'll be updating all these records that we have with the amount value as 5,000. Right? So that we have this information updated all at once. Right? We'll see how to basically achieve this process. Right? Now, things needed to get started with your data migration is you need to have your Excel file open, right? You need to have your Excel file open, right? So I'm doing it. I'm sharing that Excel sheet with you people. Let me know if you can see it. Right. Yeah. So is my Excel sheet, Excel screen visible to everyone? Is my Excel screen visible to everyone? Awesome. Awesome. Right. Now, so what is our main agenda here? Our main agenda is to basically reduce the manual effort that is been involved in updating those records. Right. For that reason, Salesforce is giving this data migration as a concept. Right. In order to do that data migration, what I need is I need to prepare a file so that I can tell the system that, hey system, use this file and upload or update that information or make use of the information that I have in the sheet and make those changes in Salesforce accordingly. Alright, it is like basically giving an input to Salesforce, right, from your Excel sheet. Giving an input to your giving an input to your Salesforce from your Excel sheet is what we are doing. Right now. So how can I refer to the records that are there in the system? How can I refer to the records that are there in the system if I want to update this record? When I say update, it is nothing but a process of clicking on this edit button, making some changes on this record and saving it back. Right? The process of update is nothing but updating or changing the values that are there on this record. Right? So currently, let's say if your amount value is 11, now as a part of update, if you want to change it to 5,000, that is where you are making a change on this field. That itself will call it as update. Right? People who are familiar with the database concepts or DML statements in Apex, in any programming language, right, you'll be able to relate to it. People who are new, update is nothing but for an existing record that we have, we are making a change to that entire record. It could be for one field or it could be for a number of fields, right? It doesn't matter on how many fields that you are doing. It is just the update that we call that process, right? If you are referring to a admin concept, it is nothing but clicking on an edit button, making a change on this record and saving it back, right? So that is what we can call it as an update, right? So now what I want as a part of this exercise is, in order to access this record that is there in the system, right, I need a unique identifier. I need a unique identifier in the system, right? So what is that unique identifier that we have in the system in Salesforce is, that is nothing but your ID, right? That is nothing but your ID. Did we go through this understanding or discussion of what is this ID in Salesforce? Did we go through that discussion? Did we go through that discussion? All right. So there are like a couple of things that we need to go through, right? Now, so what is this ID? ID is nothing but it's a unique identifier for a record, right? It is a unique identifier for a record, right? Now, if you ask me, is it a unique identifier for an object? The answer is no. It is a unique identifier for each and every record that you create in Salesforce, right? Now, to compare or to let you know the difference, so what I have done here is I have opened one tab which had one record, or which had one record, and the second one, what I'll do is I'll open another record which is having a different number here. But I'm just opening two different records in my system. One is having the auto number as 11, another one is having the auto number as 7. Alright. Now, if you see in the URL, if you look at your URL, alright, if I change between these two records, you can see the difference between these two IDs. Alright, let me just put it in an Excel sheet so that we can compare. Alright, so I've just copied the first record ID, and did I copy this one? Alright, so this is the one that I'm copying. Alright, so if you see, the rest all URL is same. Alright, the only thing that is changing is this ID and this one. Right, so I'm just copy pasting them here. Right, if you see, you can clearly observe that till this point of 63, everything is same. Till this point of 63, everything is same. That is where the rest all three values decide, or it is basically on depending on the last three values where you can identify the difference between the IDs that we have in the system. Right. So if you see, the first one has small v, small s and capital A, and the second record has the ID as XH X, capital H and capital E, right? So now, if you ask me how exactly this ID will be helpful in Salesforce is, if you have a unique ID, if you have an ID for a given record, right, all you can do is you can open that record without knowing the auto number or without searching for the details. How can you do that? If you have I would repeat, if you have an ID handy for a given record, irrespective of what object record it is, if you have an ID, all you can do is in your URL, you might have login.salesforce.com. Alright, I might have a different URL. We'll get to this point in our lightning discussion. For now, what you can do is, if you have URL as login.salesforce.com, post your .com, put a backslash and paste your ID here. Alright, I would repeat, if you have your URL as login.salesforce.com, right, what you do is, at the end of your URL, if you have anything, or at the end of the .com, if you have anything, remove it, right, whatever it is, remove the entire section, remove the entire URL, just keep that as login.salesforce.com, post your .com, put a backslash and paste that ID that you have, and if you click on enter, it would take you to that record. It would take you to that record detail page. Right? It would take you to the record detail page. Right? So will it work for all the records? Yes, it does. Right? So what I'll do, I'll basically open any case record. Right? So case record might have a different ID for each and every record. So what I'll do, I'll copy this ID and I'll go back to any of the tab that I have opened up. Right? I'll basically do the process that we have discussed, removing all the things that are after your .com, right? I'm putting a backslash and pasting that ID here. Currently, I'm on SP000011 record, right? I'm on this demo August 6 batch details record. If I copy paste that case ID that I have, right, in the URL, and if I click on enter, it would take me to the case page. It would take me to the case record page with that number, right? So what is that ID that I've copied? I've copied the ID for this case number, right? I've pasted in a different tab and clicked on enter. That is where that page has redirected that case record, right? So from this exercise, what you got to know is, if you have an ID handy, right? If you have an ID in your Excel sheet or anywhere, that is where you can easily identify a record in Salesforce. If you have an ID handy, you can identify a record easily in Salesforce, right? So what we are doing is, we are making sure that we are leveraging this concept called ID. Right? And we are utilizing that to identify the record that I want to update. Right? So we are leveraging this ID to update the records. And if you ask me what is the importance or when exactly this ID will be created, as soon as you create a record, right? Salesforce would automatically give you an ID, right? So if I'm creating a case record, right? If I just create a case record with some information, if I click on save, as soon as a record has been generated, as soon as a record has been saved, system would generate an ID and assign to that record. Right? It is like having a kind of a unique number or a unique ID that is given to a record that we are creating in Salesforce. Right? So this is a ID that is being generated for this case number. Alright. So it is the ID number that is being given to this case number. Alright. Now what I have understood from this exercise is, so using this ID, I can uniquely identify the record that I want to access. Right? I would repeat, using the ID that we have in Salesforce, right? You can access any given record or any record with that ID. Right? You can access any record if you have a proper ID to it. Right? Right? So that is your ID concept. Now, why this ID logic or ID discussion came into play is, right, why this ID has basically entered into this discussion is because, right, if I want to uniquely identify this record from my Excel sheet, how can I do it? If I have a unique identifier, my job would be very easy to identify this record and tell the system that this is the value that I want to update to this record. Right? So if you have a unique identifier that you can use in your Excel sheet, that is where you can identify this record, and you can also tell the Salesforce that, hey Salesforce, use this ID to identify that record and update that information according to the information that I'm entering in my Excel sheet. Right? So the idea is nothing but, so if you can uniquely identify your records, that is nothing but using your ID. Alright, using your ID. And the second one is the columns that you want to update. So what I'll be preparing as a part of my data is, I'll be preparing this Excel sheet, listing out all the IDs that I want to update, which is nothing but listing out all the records that I want to update. And I'll provide the amount value for that records. Right? I'll provide the amount values on this record. Right? Now, so how to identify the unique records, or how to identify the records that we have in the system is because is using your ID column. Right? Right? So how can I get my IDs for the records? I can copy paste these IDs that I have, and I can start noting down these IDs. Right? So as a part of this exercise, if you want to collect all the IDs or all the records that you want to update, so what I'll be doing is I'll be collecting all the IDs that I have for individual records. Right? So I'll open them, copy this ID, copy the information that I have after this backslash. So easier way to do it is double click on that value and copy it, Control-C and Control-V. Right? So I'm just opening all the records and copying that information that I have there. Right? I'll copy this information and paste it here. Right? And what I'm doing, I'm preparing this ID column so that I can tell the system that use this ID column to uniquely identify that record. Alright? And I can tell the system what all the columns that I want to update, or what all the records that I want to update. Right? So that is why I'm preparing this ID column here. At 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? I'm just copying this ID information here and pasting. Right? Now I have a list of records that I can or that I want to update in the system. Alright? Now it is the time to decide what all columns that I want to update from my data migration. Right? In case if you want to update this amount column, that is where you can write your amount column here. Right? In case if you want to update your country or city, you can start writing that value here, and you can provide the value under this column. It is just like for this record, I'm updating this amount information. Let's say if I want to put it as 6,000, I can do it. Right? If you want to update it with multiple information, you can go ahead and write those information here. To make sure that we are aligned with that discussion that we had, I'm updating the same information for all the records. Right? So that is where I'm telling the system that these are all the records that I want to update. And what is that column that I want to update? I want to update the amount column with this information. Right? So this is the process of preparing your Excel sheet. Right? Preparing your Excel sheet. In case if you want to update multiple columns, let's say if you want to update the student email address, that is also a thing that you can do it from here. You can also update multiple columns. When I say columns, it is nothing but the fields that we have. You can also update multiple fields from your Excel sheet. Right? So you can start writing the field name and provide information in this column. Right? So what I'll say, I'll update the email address like this. Right? I'll go ahead and update the email address like this. Right? I'll go ahead and do it. Right? So what I'm doing, I'm trying to prepare the data that I want to use as a part of my exercise. Right? I want to prepare the data in my Excel sheet, and I can go ahead with the process that align. Right? Now, are you with me so far? So we are yet in the process of preparing a file which tells the Salesforce what exactly it needs to do, not what exactly it needs to do. Right? So I'm just telling the system, this is the information that you need to use, and these are the columns these are the fields that you need to update. And for what all records, using the ID, you can identify that record and update this information, right? Update the information. So I've prepared the Excel sheet. In my system, right? I've prepared my Excel sheet in my system, right? What is the next step? Once you prepare the data, what you have to do, Control save, right? Control save, or you can always click on file and save, right? So it might ask you to save that information, right? I'll quickly do it from my end, right? I'm just stopping the sharing. I'll just save it and let you people see what exactly I've done, right? Just give me a moment. So I'm just simply saving the file, and I hope most of you people know how to do it, right? I'm just going ahead and selecting the right folder that I need to use, right? Where exactly? Alright. So I'm just picking up the right file that I need, right folder, so that it can be easier for me to track, alright? Yes. So what I've done, I've selected the folder where I want to save it, right? I hope now you are able to see my screen, right? I'm just putting the name of my file as demo harvest file update, right? I'm putting it as file update. Now, do you think that Salesforce will be able to pick up this Word document? Do you think that Salesforce is able to pick this Excel workbook that we have? The answer is no. So that is where we need to give this file in a way that Salesforce understands it. Alright. So that is nothing but your CSV format. Alright. So we need to save this file with an extension as .csv. We need to save this file with an extension as .csv. How can you do that? Once you are seeing this screen, always select your type, save as type as your CSV, which is nothing but comma delimited. Right? Select this value, right? Select this value, and then click on save. Right? So I'm making use of this folder, right, to save this information, and I'll click on save. Right? I've clicked on save. I'll click on any prompts that comes up. I'll click on save. Right? So that is what I'm doing here. Now, so once I have the file ready, that is where you can ask the system to consume this file and do the needful on the Salesforce. Alright. So now we have completed the process of preparing the file, so that we can tell the Salesforce that these are all the items that you need to work on, and we can tell the system that this is the information that you need to update for individual records that I have in the system. Right. So that is what we have done. We have prepared the file. Now is the time where you need to understand how to feed that file to Salesforce. Right? Now is the time where you need to understand how to feed the file to Salesforce. Right? So there is a URL that I can share with you, right, which is nothing but your workbench.developerforce.com. Right? So what exactly it is? It is a kind of a tool that you can use, or tool or a website that you can use to feed the information to Salesforce. Alright. Anything that is related to your data migration, you can always rely on this. Website where you can upload your file that you have prepared, so that it would be taken as an input to your Salesforce, and it would make those updates accordingly. Right? It would make those updates accordingly. Alright. So as soon as I've shared that link with you all people. Alright. Let me know if you have received it. Right? So you can use that URL. Right? As soon as you hit on that URL, this is the page that comes up. Right? So if you are dealing with the production environment, or if you are dealing with a developer edition, keep it as production. In case if you are dealing with any sandbox, like we have discussed in our maybe in our starting days of our class, in case if you are dealing with a production, keep it as production. Or if it is also a developer edition, select the first option which says production. In case if you are dealing with any sandbox, select the second option. Alright. How can you differentiate between a sandbox and a production? How can you differentiate between a sandbox and a production is, if you are using a URL as login.salesforce.com to log into your org, that means you are using a production org, right? If you are using the URL as test.salesforce.com, the only difference between the earlier URL and this URL is nothing but there is a replacement of login as test, right? So if you are logging into Salesforce with the URL as login.salesforce.com, that means you are basically logging into production. Right? In case if you are using test.salesforce.com, which you might not be using right now because you are not having the production access, right? That is nothing but your sandbox, right? Now, alright, so this is a easier way to identify whether you are logging into production or your sandbox, right? If you ask me, currently I'm using login.salesforce, do you think that it is a production org or something? It is just your developer edition where you have the capabilities of your production. That is why you are using login.salesforce to log into the system, right? That is where you are using login.salesforce to log into the system, right? Now, so we have understood which environment that we are logging into, either your production or your sandbox, right? Now, so currently we are in the developer edition, so that is why I'm selecting the production as my drop down value here, which says environment, right? So API version, for now, what is the latest? Keep it as is, right? Keep the latest version, API version as is, right? Select the latest version from this drop down. Currently the latest version that I can see is 50.0. I'll select that, right? And once you are done with this process of identifying to which org or which environment that you want to do the kind of a data migration activity, select that one, provide the latest API version, check this checkbox which says I agree to the terms of the service and click on login with Salesforce, right? In case if you have not opened your existing, opening the existing Salesforce alright, so you will not be able to log in, right? There would be a kind of a pop-up that comes up where it would ask you to enter those credentials, right? So the error that I got was, it was saying that it is not supported with this 50-year version, so I'll reduce the API version and I'll click on this checkbox which says I agree to these services and I'll click on login with Salesforce, right? Now, so if I'm not logged in my Salesforce org for now, so that is where it would reevaluate to see if I'm using the right credentials, if I'm the right person to allow into this activity called data migration, alright? So it would ask me for the credentials. Feel free to provide those credentials and click on login button, right? So once you have completed that process, that is where you will be able to see your name on the top hand right hand side corner, alright? You can see your name on the top right hand side corner, alright? If you hover on that one, it will give you the org details as well. It will also give you the org details as well. That is where you can evaluate to which org you have logged in here, right? Right? So once you complete these steps, alright, so that is where we can feed the file to the system. That is where you can feed the file that we have prepared, to Salesforce. Alright, we can feed that file that we have prepared to Salesforce. How to do that? So if you see, there are like a couple of options or drop downs that are there. It says info, queries, data, migration, and utilities. Right? Since we are dealing with the data migration here, that is where I'm clicking on this drop down which says data. Right? Alright. Now, what is that operation that I'm doing here? The operation that I'm performing here is an update. Right? So I want to make the changes on an existing record. Right? Because I have a records already created in the system. I want to make a change on the amount field and my email address of my students. Right? I want to do two activities. I want to update the fields which says amount field, and I also want to update the email address that is there on this records. Right? Since I have the records already created in the systems, that is where I'll be selecting this option as update. Right? So what is this insert? Insert is mainly meant for creating new records. Update is nothing but updating the existing values or existing records that we have in the system. Right? In case if you want to delete those records, that is where you can select this option. It says move the records to the recycle bin. That means it is asking us to, or we are asking the system to delete the records that I am feeding in the system. Right? Since we have this understanding, that is where I'm clicking on this update link. Right? Now system is asking me select the object on which you want to do that update. Right? So which object I want to do that update? I want to do this update on this object called demo August batch details that we have. Right? So what is that object that I've prepared the data for? I've prepared the data for this object called demo August. Here is my demo August 6 batch details. Yeah, here it is. Right? So this is the object where I want to do that data migration. Right? Demo August 6 batch details is what the object on which I want to do that data migration. That is your first step. Right? Am I doing a single record update or I want to do it from a file? Right? Since I have a file prepared, that is why I'm selecting this option which says from file. Right? Then what I'm doing is system is asking me to select the file from where we want to get that information. Right? So what I'll do is let me do one thing. Let me get that. Okay. Alright, let me do one thing. So I'll basically feed that file and I'll show you. Right? I'll feed that file to the system. So once you click on that button, it would basically show you a page where you can basically select the file from the system that you are using. Right? So identify the folder where you have saved that information. Alright. So I'm just searching for the folder where I have saved my file that I have prepared. Alright. Yes, here it is. So here is my file. Alright. In the data migration is where I have saved my file that I have created. Alright. Here is the file that I have created. Alright, so I've selected this file now. Alright, and I'm clicking on open here. In case if you are not finding your file here, that means you have not selected you have not saved your file in the .csv format. If you are not able to find your file here, that means the folder that you have saved, that means you are not using the .csv format while saving your file. Right? While I was saving this file, I've made sure that I'm making sure that I've saved the Excel file that I'm saving in a .csv format. In case if you want to check if you are using the right file or not, on a hover of your file, alright, the system would tell you what is the data type or what is the type of your file that you are looking at. It says Microsoft Excel, separated value file. Right? If you see, CSV is the full form of, or CSV is the shorter form of, separated values. What do you mean by CSV? It is nothing but separated values. Right? I'm selecting that file and clicking on open here. Right? So this is the steps that you need to do in this step. Right? These are the things that you need to configure or basically select in this step and click on next here. Right? So now system is asking me the file that I've uploaded, which is with this name, says that it was uploaded successfully and it contains 6 rows. As a part of the file that I've created, it also has 6 rows, right? And plus one header, which is nothing but the column that I'll be using, alright? So we have currently 7 records or 7 rows here, but it is ignoring the first column that we are feeding into the system, alright? Why this first column is needed? What we are doing here is we are mapping the fields that we have in Salesforce. We are mapping the fields that we have in the Salesforce with the columns that I have created in my Excel sheet. If you see this CSV field, that is nothing but the list of columns that you have mentioned in your Excel sheet. It is like mapping your Excel sheet to the fields that you have in Salesforce. I would repeat, it is a process of the step that you are looking at currently is a process of mapping your fields that you have created in your Excel sheet with your Salesforce field. Right? If I don't have this step, how will system will understand that it has to take this ID column and map it to the ID column that we have in Salesforce? How would it know that it needs to map this amount field that we have in an Excel sheet to the amount column? Right? It can also do like this. It can map this amount column to this student email address, or it can map this city field to some other field. Right? So this is the place where it is taking your input to decide which column should be going to which field. Right? I'm saying ID column should be going to the ID field. Amount column should be going to this field that we have in the Salesforce, which is nothing but amount __ C. Right? So I don't have the rest all fields here. City I have not updated. Country I don't want to update, so that is why I have not added them as a columns in my Excel sheet. But what is the column that I want to update? I want to update the student email address. Where is the student email address being saved? It is being saved in your Excel sheet as a column. Right? So what I'm saying is I'm asking the system to basically take this column and map it with the field called student email address. Right? I've done the same process for amount as well. This amount is nothing but asking the system to copy this column and map it with field called amount __ C in Salesforce. Right? That is what we are doing now. So once you are done with the mapping, what you can do is you can click on this button which says map fields. Right? Once you are happy with this mapping, you can click on that button. That is where Salesforce or this website which says Workbench would come up with a list that has been configured in a previous step, which says Salesforce fields, and it is saying that these are the fields that I'm taking from an Excel sheet. Excel sheet fields are this column mapped with Salesforce fields. Right? So once you are happy with this mapping, all you can do is click on confirm update. Click on this confirm update. Right? So now what it is saying is, as soon as I click on this one, it says there were 6 successful and 0 errors. Right? If there are any errors, that is where you can see them here at the count that you can see from this section, which is in blue. Right? In case if you want to see the actual result for individual records, you can see in this section which says results. Right? You can also see the status. Right? If it has been created, it would have the status as created. If it has been updated, it would have the status as updated. Right? It would have the status as updated. Right? Now, so as per the system, it is saying that it has properly updated that information. Let's quickly go to this records and see if it has been properly updated or not. Right? So what I'll do is I'll open all these records. And we'll compare this information whether it has been updated properly or not. Right? Now, so how to compare this information? I'll pick up the Excel sheet that we have prepared and I'll keep it aside. Alright. Now what I'll do is I'll compare this information with the information that we have in the Salesforce. Right? Now, so where is my this record ID? Alright, this is my record ID. I'm going back to my Excel sheet and I'm clicking on Control F search here. So it has given me the 7th record is the one that you're looking at currently, and it says amount field should be 6,000. So if you see, the amount field has been updated as 6,000. And what is the email address that I've asked the system to update? I've asked the system to update it as t6@gmail.com. Right? It has been updated. Right? Let's quickly go to the next record and see if it is updated properly or not. If you see, I'm comparing these IDs here, W, small w, small w, 0, and M is the record. If you see in this list, this is the 6th record. And if you see, the email address being updated as t5@gmail.com, amount is also updated as 6,000. If I go to the next record, this is the record that I have. It has been updated as t4@gmail.com, amount is also updated to 6,000. Right? So if you keep on continue this process, you will get to know that all the information has been updated properly. Right? All the information is being updated properly. One more thing that you can see to confirm whether the record has been updated just now or not is by looking at your last modified by field. Right? If you see, this field basically gives me information saying that this record has been updated at 16/9/2020 at 8:30 p.m. Right? When I've completed that activity, it was 8:30 at my in my clock. All right. So that is why it was updated with this info. If I continue this process and checking other records, if I continue to check the other records, that is where I'll get to know that the last but one record has been updated as T2, right? And the last one has been updated as T1@gmail.com with the amount as 6,000. Right? So this is the process where you can utilize the data migration to update the existing records. In case if you want to create new records in the system, you have to basically populate all the mandatory fields that you need to populate. Once you create a record, you can prepare the file similar to this one, right? You can prepare an Excel sheet similar to the one that I'm showing on the screen, and you can go ahead and click on this workbench.com. Right? You can click on insert. You can follow the same procedure. You can follow the same procedure to do that process. Select that file, click on next, give the data mapping, click on mapping fields, and then click on create records, or click on a button which would say insert records. Since we have done the process of update, that is where we have seen the process which says update records. In case if you are creating a records, that is where you will see it as insert. Insert is nothing but insertion of a new records or creation of a new records. Right? Depending on what you select, that is where the system would ask you certain things. Right? So that is all we have for today's class. As a part of our today's discussion, what we have done is we have basically updated the existing records with certain information that we have. Right? That is what we have done in our class. Right? As a part of this exercise. Right? Like that is all we have looked at. So to summarize what we have discussed, the concept that we have discussed is nothing but your data migration concept, where we have taken some information from Salesforce. We have used the workbench.com to update those records from your Workbench website, and that information is being reflected in Salesforce. Right? So this is nothing but your data migration. Alright. So having said that, I'll open up the session for Q&A if you have anything. Alright. In case if you don't have any question, I have a couple of questions that I can ask for you. Alright. Feel free to let me know if you have any questions. If not, I have one question. Alright. So let's restrict our discussion for only this session. In case if you have anything, for previous class, maybe I'll take it tomorrow. Alright, so I see one interesting question where Sri Krishna Botu was asking. Alright, awesome. That was the question that I was expecting from you if you have followed the discussion. Right? So what he was asking is, sir, you have told me that the process of updating one individual record might introduce human errors where a user might miss out some records that he needs to update. But as a part of your that is where you told that data migration will solve that issue. But what I can see in this exercise is you have copy pasted that IDs into an Excel sheet and you are saying that it would resolve that issue. Right? So how is that relevant? Alright, how that will basically solve the issue of human errors. Right? In case if I am preparing that Excel sheet, there is a high possibility that I might also skip some records. Even though I have a similar information that I need to update for all the records, there is a high probability that I might miss out some IDs that I need to copy into my Excel sheet. Right? If that is what the question that you had, I think most of you are basically asking me the same question. If you have asked me that question, you are in the right direction. Right? You have properly followed the discussion that we had. Right? Now, if you ask me what is that answer to it, right? What is that answer to it? The answer is very simple. All you can do is you can make use of the queries that we have in Salesforce. So where exactly we'll be covering this queries topic? It would be covered as a part of your development session. Right? Right? In case to give you a high level understanding of what exactly it is, I'll write a query to show you how easily we can get those IDs. Right? Alright, I'll show you how to get those IDs from the system, alright, without manually copying them into your Excel sheet. Alright, so alright, so you can always write a query right? So that you don't have to manually copy each and every records in the system, right? Let me do one thing, right? So I'll go back to, there are like a couple of plugins that I'll be walking you through, right, which would simplify the process of writing your query, what is this query and how we can use it. All things we'll be discussing as a part of our discussion that we'll be having in our development session, right? So I'm just showing you the process of writing a query. It is not to let you, or it is not a kind of an informative session. It is just a demonstration session where you can utilize this concept called queries that we have in Salesforce to get that information without manually copy pasting that information. So I think we have student email address, yes. Right? So once you write that query, click on export. That is where you'll get that information. What you can do is copy this, click on this button which says copy Excel format, and that is where you can copy paste that information into your Excel sheet. Right? You don't have to manually do it for individual records. Right? So if you see, I've not manually copy pasted that information, right? I've asked the system to do it for me. Now I can make these changes on these records according to my requirement. If I want all the record values to be updated as 6001, right? Right? I can do it from there. Right? I can make some changes on the email address according to the information that I get, and that is where I can make use of this file and feed it to the system, and that is where I can get these records updated again, right? So that is the process of doing it, right? How to write this query and what is this, where exactly this query is being used and all, we'll discuss in our development session, right? So the thought process is to walk you through that issue that we are facing, and then to introduce this concept which we'll be covering in our development session, right? People who are familiar with the database queries, it is exactly same as your database queries, right? And people who are not familiar with that, we have a separate session to discuss what is this SOQL, what is this queries, and how are they useful, right? All those things will be covered as a part of your development session. Since we had that question, so most of you people have responded to the same thought process that you need to have shared this information. It is just to let you know how to basically retrieve that information that we have copy pasted manually and reduce that human error, right? So that is the thought process behind sharing this concept called queries, right? So people who are asking me, is this a database query? Yes, we have one constraint here, that is nothing but like how you can use an asterisk symbol in your database query languages, or in any other query languages. You can put a select star from, right? You can start writing select star or asterisk and say from that database table, right? You cannot use that while character, or you cannot use that asterisk or a star mark in Salesforce, right? You cannot get that information just by writing star, which would fetch all the fields in another databases. That will not happen in your Salesforce. Apart from that, rest all remains same. All you need to do is access that object using your APIs. Access the fields plus your database, access those fields and your object names using your API, right? Using your API. And I hope most of you know where to fetch the API name from, right? So make use of those information and feel free to try out this, right? So that is an easier way to get the IDs without copy pasting it, right? All right. Alright, since we are on the top of the hour, right, in case if you have any questions related to today's class, feel free to ping me. If you have anything apart from this one, I'll open up the session for the first 5 minutes that we are going to connect. I'll open up the session for Q&A for previous classes, right? I'll stay for 2 more minutes. In case if you have any questions, feel free to ping me. If not, we can call it a day for today. Alright. So do we have more sessions on the data migration? So it is all about how you practice it, right? How you practice it. I've given you all the inputs that you need to do for the data migration. All right. Feel free to try out the options that I've told you. But the part of how to fetch that information is what we are going to cover as a part of our SOQL concept, which is nothing but your query concept that will be covered as a part of your development session. Right? How to fetch that information without manual effort is what we are going to look at in our coming sessions. But the part of how to do that data migration once you have that file ready is what is being covered. Right? Feel free to try out the options that you have on this workbench, and I've also shared that URL with you people. Feel free to use that and get the things done. Right? Right. I've gone through all the questions that have been asked. Right. I don't see any questions that are been not addressed. Right. In case if I've missed out anything, you can feel free to copy from the query, return, and upload without manually copy and paste. Yeah. So the thought process is to you make use of your query, get that into your file, prepare that file with the changes that you want, and save that file into .csv. That is where follow the process of accessing your workbench, uploading that file there, right? Uploading your file there, select the right option, and select the right option for your object, and select the mapping, then click on the button which says confirm the process. That is where you will be able to see the changes, whether it has been successful or failure. Alright. So one thing that you can remember is always make sure that you are providing the mandatory fields and you are not violating any data violation rules. You are not conflicting or you are not sending any bad information as a part of your file that you are feeding into the system. In case if you are doing it, Salesforce would throw an error, just like how if you have updated any information or any record with the bad data, that is where it throws an error, similar the way it works in the data migration as well. Right? All the things that we have learned so far will also work here. Right? In case if you are missing out any fields which are mandatory, Salesforce would throw an error that a required field is been missing or something of that sort. Feel free to play around with these things. Right? Take this as an example and play around with the data and see what would happen if you are entering a bad information, what would happen if you are not entering the mandatory fields that have been mentioned in the system. Right? So that is all about your data migration concept, and we have code migration concept that needs to be covered as a part of tomorrow's class. We'll look at what is code migration and how it is being useful. Right? Are we done with the admin concept? The answer is no, we are not yet done with the admin session yet. Right? So we have three more concepts. We have three more concepts that are pending from our admin class. Alright. In case if you have anything that you need to attend, feel free to continue. Right. In case if you have any questions, I'll wait for another minute to see if there are any questions. If not, we can call it today.